Boom, I'm in the room. This, as you realise, last night I had a little bit of a drama with my second guest. After the show, I managed to get her back in and we had a real chat. So, what I did was I recorded it. So, this is the recording that we did. So, we're going to be talking about shame and guilt and how that affects people. So, have a listen to this, watch this. This is the interview I did with Lois. So I'm just going to bring in a guest now. Lois was on last week. Unfortunately, we didn't get to hear her last week, but I've got her here now. So, Lois, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I love technology. It's good and it's bad.
It's all it's all a big test. You can
It's
tell
all a
it's
bit,
live when it goes wrong.
but it's good because otherwise we wouldn't be talking. So
Absolutely.
I guess nothing's perfect, except, and we're not perfect either, but we're
No.
working on it.
Say I'm almost perfect.
So
apart
let's have a good,
apart from my tech plays me up.
yeah, let's have a good time now.
Absolutely. So Lois, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from on the mental health scene.
Okay, I live in North Carolina in the mountains outside of Asheville in North Carolina. Used to live in the West Coast, but now I'm now back in the East Coast with family. And I began podcasting because of all the um, problems we've had the last few years with the COVID, the vaccines, and so forth and so on. So I've been enjoying traveling around the world with podcasts and giving my message about not having any shame and guilt. So that's where I am today.
So yeah, we had a chat earlier about the mental problem of having shame and guilt and carrying it with yourself for a long time. How did you came? Well, let's just step back a bit. I got into podcasting as well because of lockdown. We were in lockdown, and one thing and another, I revamped an old skill that I had, and turned around to doing a podcast. And this is where it's evolved for me today, and now I do live streams as well as podcasts. So I guess you've come on that same sort of journey, and it's
Yes, it's
fantastic.
wonderful. It's wonderful. There's tech problems, but the benefits far outweigh the problems that you have because my
Absolutely.
message has been now in 17 countries in 2 years and like 250 podcasts. I could not have traveled around the world to do that.
Absolutely. So, what's your podcast about then?
Well, I don't have a podcast yet. I'm working on it. And I have been interviewed many times because shame and guilt, which I call shame guilt, is in everything, in every person, and it's not normal, it's common. Now, how did I come to that conclusion? I had a very abusive childhood and I had many physical problems. I had many brain traumas and broken bones and things of that sort. And of course, that carries a lot of emotional problems with it. And somewhere in my 50s, I became very depressed and anxious and not able to work properly. And that was because of all the shame guilt that piled on to me. Even though I was a very energetic person. I was a trailblazer in my nursing field. I created the first kidney hemodialysis unit in the United States. I created home dialysis and other firsts in my life. So I have been a very high achiever. But shame guilt can take down the most energetic, very intelligent and it's mainly because we don't understand it. Once I understood that shame and guilt were the reason that I had many negative emotions, I began to heal. And I did heal quite quickly. Many other people had come to me to find out why I could heal from such devastating injuries. And I taught them the same things that I was doing, and they too healed. So, at somewhere in my 60s, educator and counselor, and I had to become a filmmaker to show people what shame guilt looks like so we not take it on. Today, I have learned many things that I share with you. I have learned that shame and guilt are two pieces of the same substance. Let's say a nickel has heads and tails, but it's the same nickel. And once a person can understand that information, then they can understand that shame, guilt is the same problem. One is not good and one is not bad. I hear people say, and how did I come to that conclusion? I came to that because shame and guilt magnify each other. Shame goes into guilt, and guilt goes into shame. It's a perpetual situation that is within us. And shame guilt doesn't leave us unless we take it out of our life. Shame guilt builds upon itself. And as a result, we have hurt, anger, anxiety, hatred. All the emotions increase in intensity with the intensity of the amount of shame guilt we have within us that we have taken on from other people and also have taken it on from ourselves. I come about this?
Yeah, how do you combat that shame guilt? What
Well, that's the
process?
main thing. Yeah, we have to understand that it's not part of us. We are beautiful human beings, and shame guilt is an energy that's negative and turns all our emotions from the positive to the negative. Something like compassion turns to depression,
So how do you
intuition.
go about combating it? How do you get rid of that negativity?
Well, you have to know your enemy, Tim. As San Soon says, know thy enemy. If you don't know your enemy, you'll never um, get rid of it or
Mm.
combat it. And that's the problem we have today is people say shame and guilt, but they have no concept what it is. And that's my job is to teach people that shame guilt is one negative energy and it's removable. It shame guilt dissolves in detection. Remember Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah.
Dorothy goes up the yellow brick road to see the all and powerful Oz. And she trembles because she's in great fear because the Wizard of Oz is the most important person. But what does her doggy Toto do? He
Does he go
pulls
up
the
and pee
curtain
on his
back.
shoes?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you don't get to the red shoes yet. We
No,
pull the
the dog
curtain
goes
back.
and pees on the Great
Yeah.
Wizard.
Yeah. So Toto the dog pulls the curtain back. And what do we see? A little old man, bald and gray, with a
Yeah.
great big machine that's doing puffing green smoke. The jig is up. Shame guilt is a puff of green smoke
Aha.
that we are made to believe is horrible, frightening, fearful, painful, and stops us from living our lives. Isn't
So
that
what we need
interesting?
is a Toto to pull back the curtain.
We have to be a Toto. And that's the message I wanted to bring to people today. Be a Toto. Pull back the curtain and realize that your depression, your anger, your anxiety, your suicidal thoughts, everything is related to shame guilt. Once you release the shame guilt, your emotions turn back from negative to positive. Isn't that wonderful? It's
Yeah.
called quantum healing. You don't have to. I was thinking of going to therapies for anxiety for a couple of years and for depression a couple of years and suicide. I mean, I'd be dead before I'd be alive.
Mm. I mean,
So the
suicide is a very difficult one to deal with. I mean, we've talked about it on the show a few times, and the person that is determined to take their own life generally you don't realise who they are. That they don't. There's no outwardly signs that they're
okay,
going to do it until they've done it.
okay,
The
now this is the
person,
reason. Yeah, and I will
yeah,
tell you the reason why. Okay, we have the love energy, and everybody knows what love is. And what does love give us? Love gives us joy and happiness, confidence. We are compassionate. That's what love gives us. But love is an energy that
mm,
gives us positive feelings. And it's good. We have confidence and we can do things. On the other side, we have shame, guilt, energy, which gives us negative stuff. It gives us depression and anxiety, and I'm not good enough. That's why suicide's so prevalent because people are not feel they're not good enough to live.
mm.
And I have
It-
had those feelings. So
yeah,
shame must be taken out of we can take it out of ourselves. We can take because culture gives it to us. Now, this is an interesting scientific information. Shame guilt is the lowest energy that you can have and still be alive. It comes in at a 10 energy.
mm,
Highest energy you can have is enlightenment, which is 700,000. 7 with 5 zeros to the 30th power. Shame guilt brings you down to 10.
wow,
Right. So that's the lowest energy. So my message today to people is get out of guilt, get out of shame. You can be angry at a person, you can have hatred, you can have anxiety because you can deal with that. If you're angry at somebody, you can solve the anger. If you regret something, you can do it another way. But if you're in shame guilt, you have no solution. The
mm,
only solution is suicide. There is no life after guilt. It's the lowest energy. So, with that in mind, the message today is get out of guilt. And if you can't get out of it, call your friend,
yeah,
call a hotline. If you
mm,
have no friends, call the store. They'll give you at least the hours of the store. I'm being very practical here because people are in guilt and don't know the damage it's doing to you. You can be angry, you can be very upset, but don't be in guilt.
mm,
Guilt is not a moral emotion. Some religions think that it's a moral. No, it's not a moral emotion. Guilt serves no good to us. It makes us a victim and it makes us very stupid. I don't want to be stupid.
no, there's no future in it. That's for sure.
So, and I know your former guest was talking about traumas. And the
Mm,
reason that people keep reliving their traumas because they haven't gotten rid of the shame guilt that's causing the trauma. Like
yeah,
if you have a fire and you pour gasoline on it, what happens?
you stoke the flames.
So that's what shame guilt is. And they get
Mm,
shame guilt because they had the traumas, but I offer that people need to find the shame guilt in the trauma and release it. And you can do that. My process is that you find it and you can release it, just like Dorothy did in The Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
The words that people say to you, you're not good or you're terrible, they are words that carry the shame, guilt energy, and you have to take the energy out of it. And that's what I help people find it out. And shame, guilt goes away once you find it. It's like the
Mm.
Wizard of Oz. The jig is up.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
That's fascinating, actually. That's really interesting. I mean, that puts a different light on why some people take their own lives. It's like I was saying, the person that's determined to take their own life,
Because
they,
they're so
the
shameful, they're
yeah,
not good enough to live.
and
I
and and the person that's in that state and does it generally leaves a lot of people bewildered why they did it. They don't
Because of
understand.
the
Yeah.
guilt. Guilt makes you shameful. Shameful makes you guilty. And there is no solution in guilt. I'll give an example. I helped someone a couple weeks ago who called me and said, I can't get over the guilt because I couldn't help my mother heal from alcoholism. And
Mm.
you know, and I know that if you don't want to heal from something, nothing's going to work. It's
Yeah.
not your fault. It's the person wasn't ready. So I suggested to this person to use regret instead of guilt. You regret that you couldn't help your mother, but you can't be guilty that you didn't help your mother.
Absolutely.
So
And
regret
and
made her think of how she can help other people get out of alcoholism. And she started many workshops that helped others to get out of the alcoholism addiction. So she was able to get out of the guilt because she felt regret. So that's what
mm,
I offer people today. If you feel guilty, just feel regret, feel anger, but don't feel guilt because guilt has no solution.
yeah, it's very difficult to get somebody to understand that it's somebody else's problem that you can't solve. It has to
Well,
be them
same
to take on
guilt.
their own problem, and your role in that is to see to help them see that they have that problem. They should own their own problems, and you shouldn't have to have the guilt because you didn't carry their guilt for them. And I
And
think
then yeah,
that's
the main thing
the key to it.
is that shame guilt, when you're in that state, you're in a confused state and you have no rational mind. You
Mm,
just have to get out of it. And so my suggestion is, if you can't, you call a friend to help you. They have hotlines, and people are too shameful to even to do that. So
yeah.
I'm I have on my website readings from spirit. It's called Now is the Time, and they're free readings on my website, loishollis.com. And you can go to that and print out 20 or 30 pages of my writings that help raise your frequency to get out of shame guilt, because it's not a logical state to be in. And that's
Mm,
why you can't talk somebody out of suicide, because it's not logical, but they're in
yeah.
shame, guilt, confusion, and their frequency is so low that they can't get out of it. But these words help you to get out of it so you at least can deal with what depression or anxiety or regret that you do have. You just got to get out of guilt and shame. Shame
Mm.
and guilt are no good. Religion has given it a gold star, and it doesn't deserve a gold star.
And I think that's what we're trying to do is to take the stigma out of it, because I guess shame and guilt, there's a massive stigma around it where people have those feelings, and then then they're ashamed to
to talk
admit that
about.
they've got those problems. Yeah,
So
shame.
I would say
Yeah,
to people that feel you can write this on a note and pin it on the refrigerator. Shame, guilt, not shaming guilt. Shame, guilt is a puff of green smoke. Remember Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz.
yeah.
And
Just
it's
a
just a
side
puff.
note on Dorothy. In the book, she had silver slippers. In the film, she had ruby slippers.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Well,
Yeah,
you can, if you want, you can click your heels and shame, guilt go away.
absolutely.
Okay. How about that one? I like that,
Yeah.
Tim. Just
Whether
click your,
they're ruby slippers or they're silver slippers, you
or
just
the,
click your
whatever
heels.
slipper you want. You can click your heels and tell shame, guilt, get away because it's only a negative energy put upon humanity. It's not normal, it's
Mm,
common, and it doesn't belong to you, Tim, and it doesn't belong to me. We can kick
yeah,
it out. And,
absolutely.
as the previous interviewer talked about the traumas, well, that's what follows you until you get rid of the shame, guilt that's causing the traumas.
Absolutely.
People keep reliving their traumas because the gasoline is still pouring on the fire. Once you pull the shame guilt energy out, you pull the gasoline from the fire and you have no more fire. You still remember the traumas, but you
Yeah.
don't have the emotional upheaval
Yeah.
and
Once you
nightmares.
recognise that you have got that trauma, um, then you can deal with it, and you can get rid of the shame guilt. Once,
Yes, you can
but
because
you
it's,
first have to identify you've got that problem in the first place, and I think
well,
that's where
everybody does,
everybody
Tim,
can help out.
but everybody has the same guilt in us because we've been
Yeah.
getting it from our mothers and the fathers and the president and the priest and the culture. It comes in everywhere. It comes from your friends and your enemies.
Yeah.
So
And
we have to know it's every place, but it's not going to be with me
or me,
or you.
I've almost got a half full glass. I
And it's
I
not
live
going to
off
be
positive mental attitude.
and it's not going to be with your listeners because they can click their heels and say, "Get away! You're nothing but shame, guilt, green
Yeah.
energy. You're a puff of green smoke."
And hopefully we've got a long way in this conversation to helping at least one person out there to get rid of their shame guilt, to recognise that it's a negative and they need to get that positive mental attitude back. And once they've got that, then it's just a straight upward climb to get out of it.
Yes,
And
the first thing is to recognize it. And that's why I call myself an educator, because I'm telling people that shame guilt's a puff of green smoke. Now, we can make friends with our inner critic. Everybody has an inner critic. You shouldn't have done that. Why'd you do that? You
yeah,
were stupid. And guess what? And I have a way of talking to the inner critic. When you hear, Tim, like you would hear, what words would you would hear from the inner voice of critic from yourself?
you shouldn't have done that.
Okay. So the answer is who is talking?
Yeah, why
Say
shouldn't I have
who's
done it?
talking? No. Say who is talking, and then you can make friends with the inner critic, and the inner critic then is your partner, not your abuser. And my
Aha.
film, I have a film on that that teaches you to make help your inner critic be your best friend. Now, my inner critic has changed his job. His name is King. And King goes around the world finding beautiful people like you so I can talk to them in interviews. He stopped the shaming and guilting because he found out this is a better way.
Absolutely.
You can make a deal with your inner critic. See, the
Yeah.
inner critic living when you were 2 or 3 years old. You're older now and wiser, but they don't know that. You have to say, "Oh, would you like to come into my timeline now? I'm not a little baby anymore."
Mm.
But he didn't know that until you talked to him. So also I have a film on that, on my website. How to make friends with your inner critic. He's your friend.
Yeah. And if he's telling you some good stuff, so much the better.
Of
I mean,
course.
so often a critic gives you the negative, but if you've
Yeah,
got a
but he
critic
doesn't
that
know
gives you
any
some
better.
positive,
Yeah, but he doesn't know any better. It's like
hmm,
you and me, if we want to be friends, I say, "Hey, what kind of ice cream you like? What kind of colors do you like?" You make friends.
yeah,
And that's what you do with your inner critic. And you say, "Who's talking?" And then you'll hear the name of the person, inner critic. We have an inner critic. Everybody does. But he was raised as you were raised in the shame guilt world. And now you changed your world to positive, not negative, but no one talked to the inner critic about it.
ah,
Do you see what I'm saying? Now, if you're in
I
a
do. I see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, see, if you're in a situation and the president doesn't know what the employees are thinking about, the president's not going to change. So somebody has to go to the president and say, "Hey, buddy, we don't like the way you're handling business. Can we make a deal? Well, I'll be happier and you'll be happier. And the more power you have, the more power I have. But we have to talk together." Oh, okay. So the president changes and then everybody's happy, but they're not happy until the president knows what's going
Hmm,
on. That's why you got to talk to the CEO of your life. Your CEO is your inner critic. And if you
that's
don't
right.
talk to the main boss, you ain't going to get anywhere, right, Tim?
Absolutely. Yeah, with me, it's the Duchess. She's in charge around here. I just do as I'm told.
Well, you got to talk to the Duchess. But
Yeah,
this is a very normal process. You don't have to, get a big um, course. I'm not selling courses. I'm teaching people to help themselves. That's what I do. I
yeah,
teach people to help themselves. I don't teach therapists because we need to help ourselves. And therapists don't go to the other model where shame, guilt, and this and that, and it doesn't fit in the normal landscape that I talk about, inner child.
hmm,
So, and also I do private sessions to help people, but I'm all for people to take care of their own selves because we, it's all self teaching. We can teach ourselves. I'm
yeah,
teaching you, and you're teaching your inner critic.
yeah,
And have your inner critic look at my films.
absolutely. So, so Lois, I think that's been a fascinating little chat we've had there. So where can people find you? And I'll put these in the show notes.
Lois, Lois, Hollis, Hollis, loishollis.com. And on my website, I have 3 websites. So you can have a very good time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this little chat.
No shame, no guilt. You got to
Absolutely.
keep the puff of green smoke.
Yep. Click your heels together and that's it. Get a little get a little tonto Toto to pull back the curtain.
Doesn't
That'll
that
do the
make you
job.
feel good that you're not, beholding to this shame guilt thing? You're empowered
Absolutely.
because
Yep.
you're the Toto.
You
You're
have the
you're
power for your own destiny.
you're right. You're Toto, your own destiny. What a thing. We all love dogs.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to.
You're welcome. Boom, I'm back in the room. Well, how do you think that went? That's what you missed last night, or on Thursday night, if you're watching this on the old catch up. Lois makes a fantastic point about carrying your own shame and guilt. And if you can put away that negative vibe and get some positive mental attitude and kick the guilt out and the shame out, your life will turn around. I'm sure it will. So until next week, then, thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy to do. So TTFN, till next week.